everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Rosie and today I really want to share my fertility story. So I don't know which way round these videos are going to go. I filmed a video talking about the fact that we're going to be doing embryo freezing, and I'm now filming this one, my fertility story. I'm not sure if I'm going to post this one before or afterwards, but anyway, I wanted to share my story, and I've talked about my fertility a couple of times now. I have a podcast with my husband called Just Interesting People, and we did 4 episodes talking about our kind of experience. They were like an hour and a half long, like really went in depth with like how we felt, the exact procedures, like, you know, all the gory details are in those episodes. So I filmed them and they're on my YouTube channel, so I'll leave them linked down below if you want to go ahead and find them. They're also obviously on all podcast platforms. You can go ahead and just search Just Interesting People and scroll down and you'll find them there. I've also talked about it probably another couple of times on my channel as well, because it's something that is such a huge part of my life and it's such a huge part of other people's lives. I think it's something that we should be talking more about and spreading more awareness and just kind of becoming more accepted and something that we talk about more. So yeah, I kind of want to do this video to go in relation with my other video where I'm talking about embryo freezing, so you don't have to go back and scroll and find my other videos. So I'm just going to go ahead and talk about my kind of fertility journey. So growing up, I always wanted to be a mum. I always wanted to have 3 kids and a husband and the perfect house and that whole thing. And I met Jeremy when I was 22, who is my husband. We got married in 2015. When I was 27, I think I was, if my maths is not failing me, which it probably is. We got married in 2015. We had our honeymoon in 2016, and we decided after the honeymoon, okay, we're gonna stop using protection and try and have a baby. And now I had been on the pill. I'd also had the implant in the arm when I was younger. I'd done all sorts of different things, and then pretty early on in my relationship with Jeremy, I decided that I no longer want to take pills. I don't particularly agree with it. I don't enjoy it. I don't like the fact that it like alters your hormones of your body. And also that I'd heard horror stories of people that came off birth control and had to wait kind of 2 years to be able to get pregnant. And I thought, I don't want to have to do that. If I want to get pregnant, I want to be able to just get pregnant and have a baby when I want. So I stopped taking the pill pretty early on in our relationship, and we've used condoms since then. But I got pregnant in August, end of July, because I had my first miscarriage. Sorry, I'm looking this up. I've got my laptop with like dates and information and things. So I had my first miscarriage at 5 weeks on August 30th in 2016. I was 5 weeks pregnant and I was aged 28. And this miscarriage, I'd found out I was pregnant on the Friday. We did the test on Friday night or Saturday morning, I can't remember. My husband went away for work for a couple of days, and it was when he was away that I had the miscarriage. I had spotting the night before, I had a sore tummy, and then I woke up and had more bleeding and went to the doctors, and it was kind of lots of bleeding. The doctor was not very sympathetic. This is when I was living in France at the time. The doctor just kind of said, yeah, you're having a miscarriage on what? So I ended up going for a scan. They couldn't see a heartbeat or anything or anything in there, and they said, yeah, you're probably having a miscarriage. So I had 2 days off work, cried for 2 days. Jeremy was not there. He came home, and then life moved on. Like, obviously we grieved a little bit, but I was pretty desperate to get pregnant again. So I got pregnant again it must have been October, because I think we did the pregnancy test in November. I can't quite remember the details. But so basically I found out before Christmas. I had Christmas with my family where I didn't drink alcohol, and I think they all knew I was pregnant, but I didn't tell anyone because I was kind of like, well, I've had a miscarriage now. I want to be careful about who I tell and not get excited. I told my parents, but that was it. I didn't tell my brothers, but I think they knew. And at our 20-week scan, we found out there was a problem. The baby had lots of problems actually with his body. So from there we had lots of different tests and scans and saw different specialists. Like, we were in, like I said, France. We went to see like a baby heart specialist in Marseille, and then we'd go to scans in this place and tests in that place. And basically we found out that our baby had Ellis Van Creveld syndrome. It was suspected at this point. They can't officially tell you until after the autopsy. So they told us he had Ellis Van Creveld. He had 6 fingers on each hand. He had really small bones, which meant that his lungs weren't growing properly because his rib cage was too small. He would have to have heart surgery. He had lots of different problems, like with his teeth, with his bones, with all of his bones were short. Basically, it's a form of dwarfism, but with like loads of severe problems. And at 26 weeks, we had the abortion, 26 weeks and 3 days, which I've talked about, like I said, in depth, where I get super emotional and do that whole thing. So like I said, I will leave them linked below if you want to go and see me talking about it, actually getting emotional, going into depth, rather than now I'm kind of just doing like an overview. But that was on May 3rd, 2017, at 26 weeks pregnant and 3 days, which is about 6.5 months pregnant. Obviously, because he had a form of dwarfism, he was tiny. He was in like the lower than 5th percentile. So my bump wasn't very big. He wasn't very big. I had to give birth to him. We held him for about an hour until he went cold, basically. We had the funeral the week after. And I'm skimming over all this, but I'll get too emotional if I kind of dive too deep into it all. And I was 29 years old. That was traumatic. I had depression for a good couple of months. I was suicidal. So that was really tough. So that was in the May time in 2017. In the December, we've moved to Miami for Jeremy's work, and that was like a whole new chapter, a whole new book, a whole new start. Like, no one knew our story, no one knew who we were, no one felt sorry for us. And we kind of started again. So we had 3.5 years in Miami, and when we were there, I had 2 of the miscarriages. So one of them was November 26th, 2019. I was 8 weeks pregnant. I was 31 years old, and we had the miscarriage in Cuba because we'd gone away for, I can't remember if it was a week or 10 days, for Jeremy's birthday in Cuba, and we were in Havana. We'd been out in the morning, came home just before lunch to the hotel or the Airbnb we were staying at, and I had sudden pain. I had to go to the toilet, and I was just bleeding, and I just knew I was having a miscarriage, so I was just crying and crying and crying. Lots and lots of blood. But obviously, because I was pregnant, I didn't bring any period things with me. Cuba does not have a lot of things available, not even just tampons and pads. Like, it doesn't have a lot of anything available. I ended up spending like 2 hours walking around the shops trying to find pads. Eventually found some, and I was like, bear in mind I'm having a miscarriage, so I'm bleeding heavily, I'm in pain, I'm having to sit down, I'm crying, I'm depressed and upset. Found some pads after about 2 hours, and had to spend the rest of the week. It was the day before Jeremy's birthday as well. His birthday's on the 27th. Had to spend the rest of the week like mourning the miscarriage, but then also trying to enjoy Cuba because we're not going to probably go again. It's kind of one of those like once in a lifetime trips. So it was really weird to have a miscarriage in Cuba and not have that kind of medical support, or I don't know. So then that happened, and then in 2020 I had my 3rd miscarriage. It was a missed miscarriage. I was 11.5 weeks, but the baby was measuring 6 weeks. And this happened on April 22nd, 2020, and I was 32 years old. So in 5 years, I lost 4 pregnancies. And the missed miscarriage, I found out I was pregnant, and then because of this Ellis Van Creveld syndrome that we carry, I thought, okay, I'll wait until 8 weeks and then I'll go in for a scan so that I can arrange figuring out if the baby has EVC, if we have to have an abortion, if we can do anything about it, if the baby's okay, all the rest of it. Went in for my 8-week scan, and they said, you're 6 weeks pregnant, and I was like, no. And I remember I came home and I was so confused. I was like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, sperm can't stay alive for that long. We didn't have sex like in those dates that they were suggesting. Like, just none of it added up, and I was like, I can't, like, I physically cannot be 6 weeks pregnant. It makes no sense. And I think after kind of talking to Jeremy, talking to a friend, I was like, oh, I know what's happening. I'm having a missed miscarriage. I'd heard about it. I'd never experienced it. So I had a missed miscarriage. I then went back to the doctors 2 weeks later to have another scan, and they said I'm still measuring at 6 weeks, and this time there wasn't a heartbeat. So the first scan at 6 weeks well, the first scan at 8 weeks when they said I was measuring 6 weeks, there was a heartbeat. It was slow, but it was there. 2 weeks later, there was no heartbeat, and I was still measuring 6 weeks. And I had the miscarriage a couple of days after that. I didn't have any kind of medical intervention, any D&Cs, anything like that. I just let nature kind of take its course. I can't remember if I had if I actually passed everything like the next day, I think it was, because I remember thinking, oh my God, I'm glad I did the scan to find out that the heartbeat had stopped so I could prepare for it, rather than not knowing and then suddenly having a miscarriage. And that was tough. I knew it was going to happen at some point, because I knew that there was no heartbeat anymore, and it was just a case of, whenever it's going to happen, it's going to happen. I went out for a walk just around the block, and I remember being like the furthest away from the house, and I was like, oh fuck, it's going to happen. Kind of had to walk really fast to get home, and I was just in agony, and it all came out in the toilet. And that was during the pandemic. So obviously 2020, March was when kind of everything shut down. Everyone was terrified. There was this thing that was going around the world and killing thousands of people. It was like a terrifying time. So the fact that I was pregnant, but then also the fact that, to go to the doctors, I would go on my own. So I'd get in a taxi, which felt dangerous and scary. I'd go into a doctor's office, which felt dangerous and scary. Constantly using hand sanitizers, not touching things, having the mask on. It was a real hard experience. Jeremy couldn't be there because of COVID, so I kind of did things on my own. And it's so interesting that like the 3 miscarriages that I've had have all been very, very different in terms of what I experienced and what happened. So the first one, Jeremy wasn't there. I was 5 weeks, so there was a bit of blood and a bit of clotting. It was like a heavy period, basically. A bit of pain. I had 2 days off work, and then kind of back to life, because it's just a miscarriage, kind of what the doctor said. The second miscarriage, obviously had the abortion then. The second miscarriage, which was the 3rd infant loss, was the one in Cuba, where kind of like I said, I had no painkillers. I had no pads or tampons or heat pads or chocolate or Netflix or kind of anything. I wasn't in my own house, in my own bed. I was staying in an Airbnb. It was the day before my husband's birthday, and we were supposed to be exploring Peru. So I remember exploring Cuba. And I remember kind of walking around like the streets and the shops and the churches and things, and having to like sit down and take a break, because I don't know, me personally, my vagina like aches when I have my period. Like it feels just bruised and sore, and it was like that times, I don't know, 5. So I had to keep sitting down and taking breaks, and also going back to the Airbnb to change the pads all the time, and they were shitty pads that like didn't soak up any blood. The blood just kind of sat on top. So it was just like, and then we went to a different part of Cuba. What was it called? Vinales. And we did like a day trip where we went to see lots of different things. And I remember one of them, we stood in front of this huge, beautiful wall, and I felt something come out of me. So I had to go to the toilet and like pull out this tissue. And then I don't know. So that was that one, like trying to kind of brush it off, trying to not grieve, trying not to think about it, just trying to enjoy Cuba. And then the 3rd miscarriage, which was the 4th infant loss, it was obviously during COVID, where it was like, the baby was measuring 6 weeks, but I was measuring 11.5 weeks. So there was a lot more that came out. There was huge chunks of meat. I guess it was the sack, or I don't know what it was, but there was just, I just remember huge pieces coming out into my underwear, and I was terrified. I was like, what the fuck is this? What is going on? I've never had this before. So it's interesting how like each of them was so different. Something I will say as well, with my first miscarriage, I didn't do this, but with the 2nd and 3rd miscarriage, like I said, the one in Cuba, like I had stuff coming out of me, and I kind of had to pull it out. I would like inspect it and look at it, and it just felt like a really motherly instinct that I had to like look at what was there. And then with the 3rd miscarriage, again, like I went to the toilet when I'd been for that walk. I came home, went to the toilet, and it all came out. And I literally put my hand in the toilet to grab it out and like look at it and feel it and touch it and photograph it. And I don't know why. And I know it sounds so weird, but I wanted to touch it and hold it and be with it. And I know it sounds super bizarre, but that was kind of my experience. But anyway, I wanted to tell you about this to kind of give you a background as to why we are doing embryo freezing. So obviously I have been through it a little bit, it's been tough. I've lost 4 pregnancies in the space of 5 years, which I wouldn't wish on anybody. And I always wanted to be a parent, I always wanted to be a mum and have lots of kids and have that kind of typical normal life that you're kind of brought up being told that you should have, and that's kind of what I wanted. And honestly, having had 4 infant losses, and I don't know, I just think my mindset has changed a lot in terms of what is important to me now. I think at the time when I first started to get pregnant, it's almost that, like I said, that expectation from family and friends, when you're getting married, when you're having kids, that's kind of what, society expects from you. So it kind of seemed like something that was expected from me. It was also something I'd been told all my life. I will be a mum, I'll be a good mum. That's kind of what I was put on this earth to do. So we kind of just did it. And obviously I wanted to do it and I wanted to get pregnant. But it's so interesting now, like however long, 6 years later, to be like, so interesting, because I wasn't happy in my life, in my job, in where we were living, things like that. Like, I love Jeremy and I was happy with him, but there was other aspects of my life I wasn't happy with. Whereas now, generally, I am super happy with my life, and it's scary to think that a baby could change that for the better or also for the worse. And you never know, you just never know. So I'm just kind of in a different headspace, and there's different things that I prioritise more. Like, I prioritise myself and what I want to experience in life, and travel is huge for me. There's still places I want to go, backpacking and travelling and see for myself, and I don't see myself doing that with kids. So maybe it's something that we do in a couple of years' time. Maybe it's something we never do. I just think I could have an incredibly happy and fulfilled life with Jeremy, maybe a couple of dogs. And I don't feel that need that I used to feel when I was younger to have kids. And I think a lot of it is because we've kind of broken away from the societal norms of have a house, have an office job, have 2.5 kids, see your friends on the weekends, do that whole thing. We live a very different lifestyle. We're 34, we're going to be going backpacking again around South America. We work online for ourselves. A lot of what we do is not the norm. We don't have a house or an apartment or anything like that. So it's interesting when you kind of break away from what society expects you to do and what you're kind of told your whole life you're going to do. When you break away from that and kind of step away and see what you want to do with your life, it's just an interesting twist in perspectives. And had we had those babies, obviously I would absolutely adore them, give them the best life and be so happy. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I want to try right now, and maybe I want to try in a couple of years. And that kind of moves me on to why we're doing embryo freezing. So there is a whole video talking about the whole process, why we're doing it, the tests that we did, how it came about, who we're going with, where we're doing it. I think I said that twice. All that information is in the other video. I'll leave it linked above or below, wherever I can. But yeah, I'm now 34 and I don't want kids right now. I might want kids in 2 years or in 4 years or in 6 years. If you think back to 2016, before I got pregnant, 6 years ago, I had no idea that I would have 3 miscarriages and abortion. I had no idea that I would live in Miami for 3.5 years. I had no idea I'd go backpacking. I had no idea I would almost lose my dad. I had no idea, there's so many things you just have no idea about. So for me to say that in 6 years' time I definitely will or definitely won't want children is just unrealistic. I just don't know. I just can't predict the future. I don't even know where I'm going to be in 6 months' time, let alone in 3 years, 5 years, 8 years, whatever. I don't know. So I kind of think for us it makes sense, especially for me as a 34-year-old. You're always told that your egg health goes down and down and down from the age of 30 and then even more at the age of 35. So it just makes sense that we do something about it so that future us can potentially have kids if we want to one day. So, we are going to go ahead and do embryo freezing in September. But I wanted to give you a little bit of a history and a backstory as to why we're doing it, what we've done before, our fertility history, our story, I guess, so that it kind of makes a bit more sense. And if I'm particularly emotional, if I find certain things hard, or if I don't know, you'll just have a little bit more understanding about where we're coming from, like what we've experienced previously to then get to where we are now and why we're doing it. So we're going to be embryo freezing in September. We're then going to go off travelling, enjoy our lives for however long we want to, and then potentially in the future use those embryos and get pregnant, potentially not as well. I don't know, I don't have the answers, but it just seems like a sensible thing to do to kind of have that done as almost a gift to future Rosie and Jeremy. So Rosie and Jeremy in 5 years' time, here is a gift of hopefully at least one healthy embryo that we can use. So that's my kind of fertility story so far. I just wanted to give you a little bit of a roundup. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like I said, I'm going to be documenting the whole thing, the whole of this embryo freezing process on YouTube. I'm going to be doing a kind of, I plan on doing, hopefully I will do like a what I eat in a day, talking about our medications, talking about prices, talking about the company I'm going with. I want to vlog any scans and tests that I'm doing, consultations. I really want to try and film as much as I can and try and share as much information as I can. So I really hope this was useful for you. I really hope you kind of understand a little bit more about our story and also maybe what other couples might be going through as well in terms of infertility and pregnancy loss and all that. I was going to say all that good stuff is not good. All of that stuff. So yeah, let me know in the comment section down below if you have ever experienced a miscarriage. I'm here if you ever want to talk. You can send me a message on Instagram as well. Also, if you ever experienced an abortion and you want someone to talk to, I'm very happy to talk to you about abortion. I'm there to support you. I've had a couple of people reach out to me and I've messaged them and helped them through it a little bit. So if you kind of need some support from someone who understands, you can always reach out on my DMs on Instagram. But yeah, thank you for watching. Stay tuned for the vlogs, I guess. I've got a lot of things in mind, a lot of things coming, so I hope you enjoy kind of learning about this process and coming on this journey with me and holding my hand and being my kind of support as well, because I enjoy coming on camera and talking to you guys and kind of sharing these important milestones with you. So right, that's it now, enough talking. Thank you for watching and I'll see you soon. Bye.